Haircut check.
I'm
Of course.
taking a restraining order out against you, Adam.
Oh God. Nice.
I'm
Of course.
taking a restraining.
I think it's fine. I don't know. Okay. Somebody linked this to make me hate Vouch.
But I think that in order to win elections, you have to convince people to vote for you. Like, it's your job to convince people to vote for you. And you do that by being popular. And one way you could be popular is by not killing 500,000 Arabs.
Jesus, that's a lot
And
of
then
Arabs.
telling the Arabs in our country to suck it up.
Okay. What is this?
You would like.
She read him like a book.
I think you would like Dune.
No one says that, but I'm like, they're fucking worms. I don't
No,
get
no,
the appeal.
it's
they're worms and fans, and then they
it's so
collect
much
the
more than
spikes.
that. It's definitely it's you would like it if you.
And by so much more than that, he means it's actually a great. Is he going to go the Palestinian route, or is he just going to do the standard? It's actually capitalism versus socialism route.
You like science
It's usually
fiction.
one of those like it's one of those books in my experience that like pretentious mansplainers like, which explains why you like it so much.
Yeah, no, I think you would.
Does he not engage with that at all? I doubt she's like going in on him. She's probably just bantering. I wonder if his son's capable of bantering, or if he gets scared that the person will not like him.
Has a PhD in sports physiology.
Look, we're all flawed. I said all of us. I didn't mean you.
How have you dealt with, I mean, you've really blown up online and you have a lot of notoriety. How has that affected the way you think about the world and yourself and what you're doing?
It's a really good question. It's definitely something to think about because when you make YouTube videos and write books and make software and stuff, you do things happen. You can even pull up your own iPhone and see your face on the screen. And there's a bit of like, oh, like I guess, like you see the numbers, like how many views or whatever you get. And you're like, okay, those are numbers. They're kind of almost devoid of any reference to any kind of emotion. Like, okay, those are high numbers, I guess, relative. What does that even mean anything? And then it first started to really hit about a year and a half, 2 years ago when like, I think most people operate when they're in the public sphere, like walking through a shopping mall at an airport under there's assumption of general anonymity. Like I can go to the mall and walk around with my wife and it's just my wife and I, and people look at you. I look really ridiculous, so people often stare, but like that doesn't bother me at all. It's just normal. But then the first few times when people look differently, like they know who they're looking at, and some of them will be like, "You're Dr. Mike." And I'm always really happy to meet people, so it never throws me off. But the fact that it happens after when I walked away for the first several dozen times, I was like, whoa, what the hell? And then after a while, it like happens all the time. And I still to this point have not gotten used to it in the sense of like, whatever. It's much more like, oh, cool, that happened. Like,
Do I need laser turrets to blow up like asteroids and shit on my stuff? How many do I need?
Still same narrative as before, but it is a thing that is a little jarring at first and kind of, maybe not jarring, requires me to recontextualize how I see things. Another thing is like, this is disgusting, so my apologies in advance, but like, you know, some of us pick our noses on occasion. I'm not talking about eating it or something. Just a little boogie gets in there, you can just get in there, then a little napkin, and let's say you're on a flight and you're doing that. Nowadays, I'm like, there are many people around that maybe know who I am. And, you know, like, oh God, it's like I'm always in a mini spotlight. And if you go on the internet, you look at other fitness YouTubers and stuff.
You need
people are
gun
always talking
turrets?
about you. And
Why
the number
gun
of comments
turrets?
that are addressing you or about you when anyone makes a video about you or a number of
care.
videos
Don't give a
starts to
fuck.
climb like to an amount you can't possibly dedicate almost any time to processing. And rarely do you hear that many opinions from that heterogeneous population of people about you. Like, I come from the old world of pre-social media, as do you, where if someone was going to say something about you, they were going to talk that shit behind your back, and either you wouldn't hear about it, or you would hear about it, and it would be like, oh, you're talking that shit behind my back, so you wouldn't take it seriously, because real men say things to the face. And then, you know, otherwise it's like face-to-face. If someone finds you disagreeable, or finds something you said erroneous or curious, they'll say it to you, which means in the real world they just never say it to you, because people almost never do that after, you know, teenagehood. But then on the internet, you see very, very unfiltered opinions, very hot takes about who you are, what it is you're doing, how you're thinking. You have this other thing where, including right very now, exactly how you phrase and don't phrase various things alternatively, you are judged on. And I have absolutely no problem being judged. I don't think I'm expected to be perfect every time. When I flub on something and give an explanation that's not amazing, of course, if I watch it back, I'm like, crap, I should have said this versus that. So that kind of thing is a bit more of a thing. I'm coming to grips with it. I have had my streak of reading comments and being like, I wonder if this person would ever say this to my face. But that's this really nasty kind of dominance, hierarchy, alpha male bullshit I'm trying to excise from my head. So at the end of the day, what's been comforting to me is to accept a few truisms of I'm here just doing my best. I am who I am. I am not perfect. I was graced, luckily, having never been born beautiful, that, if people are like, oh, that guy's face looks weird, I'm like, fucking join the club, my friend. I've been looking at this thing for 40 years. Imagine how I feel. So I'm not like, I haven't had to be liberated from any attachments to my own infallibleness. Because like, imagine you're a female celebrity. You're a very pretty girl growing up. You heard only good things. Then social media comes on and everyone's dunking on you like you look terrible. You had one bad makeup day on a show and they caught an interview from the wrong angle and it's just 100,000 comments about how you've crested the hill and all this other stuff. Luckily, I don't have to deal with that. My physique is open to criticism, but I'm also a competitive bodybuilder. I've been that much longer than I've been social media relevant. It's like when you're on stage and basically underwear in front of a crowd of people and they're literally judging you, you sort of just like kind of develop. I don't even know if it's a thick skin, but you're kind of just like, yeah, like you have an opinion about my body. That's cool. People may be right, may be wrong. And so my best kind of coping mechanism has just been like, I'm just me. I'm absolutely not perfect. And if people are going to criticize me, I probably have it coming. And if they're going to be incorrect about the criticisms, it is not my responsibility to correct every single person. I would love to do that. I used to do every single comment I would reply to until I beat the conversation to death and won the debate. I can't do that anymore for time constraint reasons. So I just have to it's a really good thing for me emotionally to have the constant exercise of letting things just get shrugged off. Like, oh, like you're an idiot, you're a charlatan, you're a clown, you're a steroid addict, and you're ruining fitness and media. And, at the end of the day, I have to be like, there's probably some good points in there. And I probably could be doing better in many respects. But also, like, I'm pretty damn good at some stuff, and I have a decent amount of confidence about that. So on the aggregate, I'm just kind of going to be like, it is what it is. And that's what's helped me the most.
Yeah, a lot of the people, so I just started doing YouTube videos a couple years ago, like 2 years ago.
Same.
Yeah, so meeting people that where the comments really are a new psychological phenomena that many people need to deal with.
Yes.
And so like you're saying, it's true that typically we have these social circumstances where you gather information about yourself by those around you, you heard gossip of what people said about you, but you didn't have to confront the brutal assessments people make. Sometimes on point, sometimes they're mean-spirited, but it really is like it's a pretty tough environment for many people to be exposed to that. So I know several of my friends, they don't read comments at all. So they'll have their team will put together the best comments, the most cheerful ones, and they'll share those, but they leave the negativity out. And so like do your thing. I've always found it to be fascinating that everyone takes their strategy of life and figures out a model that keeps their psyche stable. Yeah. So I mean, my personal disposition is I love the comments.
Get out of here.
I love.
You're going to do great on social media.
It's my favorite part of social media.
Oh, I wish I could say
is to hear what people say. It brings me so much joy, especially those who try earnestly they try to create their best insult. Right, and you can tell that they thought about it a lot, and they really carefully crafted it, taking their best go.
Like a paragraph size.
Yeah, or like even a sentence. But like you just like respect, like you actually gave it some thought, like according to your abilities, try to land one. But yeah, that's interesting. So Mike, one thing I want to talk to you about today is so I'm really trying to figure out like the vibe of the podcast. Like, why does this exist? Why is it valuable to people? And I'll confess, my secret motive is that I do think that humanity is at this critical juncture. Like we could be evolving to something spectacular. We could also get ourselves into a mess in so many ways. And I see the situation for what it is. And it's hard for me to spend time on anything other than that. But that's not where people's minds are at. People want to put on muscle, and they want to lose weight, and they want to not feel anxious, and they want to not be depressed, and they want to make more money at their job, and they want more status in life, and they want a partner in life. These basic things that humans want. And so I discovered in hanging out with you that we really care about similar things. We see the world in a similar way. So I had many questions for you that are now remapping into other directions.
Thank God.
Yeah.
I'd much rather talk about the stuff you and I connected on, though I would be happy to talk about anything you like.
Okay, cool. So I mean, this is like an open conversation. So you and I both.
I feel like that's Cope, and he'd break down after a week of what Destiny gets. This guy is fairly popular online and gets a lot of it online. So he can probably handle negative comments, I would imagine at this point. The only things that would make it easier for him than maybe somebody in my position is that, one, he does have like a group of people or a tribe that he kind of identifies with. I think I would say he's like part of the online like guru sphere a little bit. And two, he doesn't live stream, so maybe he doesn't have to be confronting it as much, but he definitely gets a ton of negative shit online. So
have an interest in the science of physiological function, and you have applied it towards physique. I have applied it towards age. But we're both using the same architecture. You take evidence, you try to map it as best you can. You keep an open mind on, you're going to be somewhat right, somewhat wrong. You're going to be constantly evolving into new things. But our approaches are pretty identical in that we really do try to isolate the evidence and the results.
Sure.
And so as you think about what you're doing, how have you imagined bridging these two worlds from what you've become known for and what you see happening in the world? And do you see there's a way to bridge these two into a conversation that brings people in, that makes them relatable and understandable? Or have you not found that bridge?
I have a few bridges. I don't know if any of them would be something I would claim to be the bridge, the big one that gets everyone thinking on the futurism topic. But at least one of my bridges that I've been fortunate enough to get to talk a few times in places, though never for long enough, is the future of physique and health and biotechnology. Because today, the tip of the spear of the best ROI things you can do for your health and how you look and feel are things like sleep, are things like exercise, are things like proper dietary management, stress modulation, so on and so forth. And those are now beginning to be more and more well understood, tactics and strategies. And it is a big part of my job in the social media sphere and in general through books and all this other stuff, including software, to get people both to understand the theoreticals behind what is sleep, why do you need sleep, what's good about getting enough sleep, how do you know you're not getting enough sleep, so on and so forth. And also empowering them with strategies and recommendations to actually do the thing and having various auto-regulatory mechanisms in there for them to guess and check to see, am I doing the thing? Am I lifting properly? Am I getting results? Am I eating properly? How's that going? So on and so forth. So that is stuff that's already kind of a known road. It's not a road we have walked completely yet, but like we know roughly where we're going, and there are some questions that have really good answers, questions that have marginally good answers, questions that we don't know the answers to, but getting the answers is very tractable, and research is currently very fruitful in that regard. I think a lot of people kind of stop their own mental model at that point, not to be derisive to other people writ large. Practical human being in 2024 will ask the question of how do I sleep, how do I eat, how do I fitness train in order to get my best combination of, let's say, longevity, quality of life, and physique, vanity, etc. You know, RP is really a vanity channel at the end of the day. And that's totally cool, but something really big changed recently, and it's the first drop in a rainstorm that's going to be an insane downpour.
Is it going to say
Texas-sized
Ozempic?
hail, all that shit. I'm kidding. Hopefully just pleasant raindrops, fat raindrops of progress. And that first raindrop to me was the exploitation at large of a new class of anti-obesity drugs, the Ozempics, the tirzepatides, and so on and so forth. Because it used to be that in your pursuit of fitness and health, you could take some supplements. And they had these very small upsides. They were very contextual. You had to be, you know, if you're not deficient in vitamin D, more vitamin D doesn't help you. Arguably, it can become toxic, so on and so forth. And then you could do the basics of actually eating well and doing fitness and all that stuff. But the conversation about pharmaceutical intervention and enhancement was like, you think metformin might do some things, but it's a very small effect, and most people don't need it, blah, blah, blah. And then there's like anabolic steroids and growth hormone, which are like, oh, they work, but the side effect profile is bigger than the laundry list. It's worse than the main effect. And so with the new class of anorectic drugs, which is what they're called, drugs that reduce appetite and food intake, you had this situation occur where to millions of people for whom dietary control was not realistic given their genetic food drive.
Wait, am I allowed to do this like this? Like, could I stack 4 of these right next to each other, or do I have to have the ins and outs of cringe?
And food environment and history of eating and their current adiposity, it now became insanely empowered to be able to control their diet however they saw fit. The ability to do that through just 1 injection a week, subcutaneous. Or now they have like, I think Ribelsis is like a pill or something like that. Baffling. Because now, to a large extent, for a huge fraction of the population that struggles with weight, your body weight becomes a turn dial. You can just turn the medication dose up and down. As long as the side effects are manageable, and they are very manageable relative to older drugs like anabolic steroids, for example, or, you know, like phentermine and stuff, or drugs that would work for 3 months and then you were used to them, they didn't do anything, just side effects. Now that we have that, all of this proselytizing that I've been doing, and no doubt you've been doing about the coming biotech revolution, has its first real killer on the block. And it's such a weird thing because you're like, it used to be before the 2022 kind of Ozempic revolution, I would just, myself and my friend Jared, pro bodybuilder, we would just blather to whoever was listening about the coming renaissance of biotech. And you get some point, you're just like, look, I get it, man. You like YouTube videos with, you know, Ray Kurzweil in them. Sweet, shut up. But after Ozempic and all those drugs, it's kind of like, oh, is this a one-off? Or are more drugs like this coming? And for me, one of my huge passions and one of my bridges that I mentioned earlier was, okay, what other drugs could be potentially in the pipeline through AI drug discovery and very receptor selectorized drug design, which is now a reality? What kind of drugs are there that could be real game changers? And I can think of at least 2 offhand. One is what would be called a non-androgenic anabolic. Muscle mass is a critical part of your healthiness of your organs. It's a huge contributor. Lowers blood glucose. It works as a calorie sink. It allows you a crazy amount of mobility. It allows everything else to be healthier. I mean, the laundry list of having higher than declining muscle mass with age, coming back up to that mid-20 status and even a little extra, is enormous. And you can resistance train it. It has a very large effect. It takes time. And in addition to that, some people, through a combination of age or just having not so great genetics, quite frankly, they don't get a lot of traction on the problem. They'll gain 3 pounds of muscle. And after a year, they'll gain another pound. And the doctor's like, you could gain another 10, that'd be great, but it's just really not in the cards for you. You're 63 years old, you have whatever genetics that are just like, you ain't doing the thing. And so a non-androgenic anabolic would be a muscle growth substance that you take that would help you grow muscle and have almost no side effects at all otherwise. And you think this is fantasyland nonsense, but there are many pathways, at least one very good candidate, the myostatin pathway in humans, that would be like not on paper difficult to exploit. I think, okay, if we had that, how would that change the game? Well, imagine now you are a person who's out of shape. You're in your 50s and you're like, I need to do something. You go to the doctor and you're like, I need to change my health. It used to be like, well, you got to diet and exercise. And it was a very uphill battle for many people. Now you can be empowered by various drugs, like drugs that reduce food intake and drugs potentially, hopefully in the future, that increase your muscularity. Another drug that increases your resting metabolic rate, and potentially another series of drugs for mental stuff. And we're already maybe in the late 2020s at a very different point where if you have physique problems, these bridges to the next generation are here meaningfully to affect you. Very different than theory. I want to be there as it happens to bring people in and go, you should try these, but talk to your doctor because they're real and they're coming.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ozempic really did change the game, that it can change a fundamental part of being human, which is the hunger response.
Huge.
And you just get a shot. And so like other primal things we have, like the want for sex and like all these basic needs we have, and now we can basically reliably modulate them.
Turn down.
Yeah, and so and even turn up on certain things. So it's actually pretty remarkable. When you got into this to bodybuilding, what was your primary game you were trying to play? Is it you locked in because it was a fun game to play, or did you have an inspiration you wanted to be like? What was the primary motive for you getting into bodybuilding?
Pure art, aesthetics. When I have a huge pump in the gym and I'm relatively lean and there's no one around, I train in a gym that's just me and occasionally my wife will come and scoff at me and then leave disappointed, as many women do when they're in my presence. I pull the shirt off, I hit a couple poses, and I'm just like, Yeah, that looks right. It's being your own
Oh
self.
my God, he did Mike's biological age.
Exercise every now and again.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess on that note, do you want to? Should we look at your results?
Yeah, I can't wait to see how terribly I did. I like that you breathe out like a heavy sigh of, ooh, oh my God, it's in a cool little envelope.
Yeah, it's a cool envelope. This is a legit presentation. All right, here we go. So first, the Vizia scan. This measures age of skin. Yeah. So typically, yeah, sun exposure, you're gonna have a cost, and then okay. So the score came in age 44. Not bad.
Terrible.
No,
So I'm
not-
biologically, chronologically 40.
Yeah.
So age 44 skin. Maybe that makes sense, right?
And not bad. I would say we've seen a lot worse.
Okay.
Yeah. So good job.
My
Okay.
skincare routines involve on every several days putting some kind of generic soap on my face.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Which makes sense. I mean, I same for the first.
My skin is my sunblock usually.
Yeah. For the first 43 years of my life, same thing. I never even applied a
Yeah.
cream.
What's that for?
All right. Spirometry. This is lung capacity. 99th percentile.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Good job.
I have a lot of lung.
Yeah. Good job. So 13.2 liters per second.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Wow.
Your advanced glycated end products. Great score.
No way.
Age 23.
23.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. The score
Take that.
1.3. So fantastic job. If you got to a 1.2, it would be age 18.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're very good on that. So
How does one improve their glycated end product scale?
it's very hard. There's very few therapies that actually. It's mostly accumulation of junk, right? From
Yeah.
from fried foods cooked at high temperatures, etc. But yeah, very hard to get rid of
Copious
AGs.
amounts of steroids.
Yeah, yeah.
That sort of thing.
So yeah, so good job on that.
All right.
Grip strength, 99th percentile. Yeah, makes sense. 132.8 pounds. The 99th percentile for men is 127. So you're
Oh, dope.
5
Okay,
pounds
cool.
above.
Very
Yep.
cool.
So you're doing very well. Push-ups, 46. So 99th percentile within your age group.
Sure.
And then if you want it to be 99th percentile for all men, it'd be 56.
Oh, yeah, I could have done that, no problem.
Yeah.
You watch me.
I was gonna say he has to be able to do way. I would imagine like 100 plus push-ups or something. No, it's a machine.
You just quit at some point.
I wondered.
Yeah, the marginal risk of even a minor injury for my physique goals at this point doesn't make any sense. If I clown showed myself on a podcast and even did a little pulling of the pec because I went closer to failure, I would never be able to forgive myself in a million years. I told myself a long time ago that, so like I do a lot of collabs and shit, and they're like, oh, you want to like flip this tire? Hell no, my
No.
bicep's not coming off. So as soon as I got a pretty decent pump and felt a little juicy and like, I did well enough on this test to do pretty well, I more or less quit.
I'm so with you. Like
Yeah.
that, I think about life through that frame everywhere.
There you go.
Yeah, and people always think it's so odd. It's like, why don't you want to flex this one? Like, no, like absolutely not worth it.
Yeah, that's what highlight reel fail videos are for.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
thought it was time
I'm
to
not doing
flex.
that. We're doing different content.
Exactly.
Okay, sit and reach. This is 50th percentile.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
I sit in the middle.
Yeah,
I don't want to
exactly.
stand out. I'm not
Yeah.
some freak gymnast. No offense, gymnast.
Yeah, 15 inches, and so 8 additional inches would put you in the 99th percentile.
Ryan, have I ever heard that statement more than 3 times in my life?
I walked right into that. Okay, yeah,
That's what she said.
Sit and stand, 9.5. So your technique was very good. 63rd percentile.
All right.
Yeah.
What, do people score above 10 or something like
It's
that?
10.
Almost everyone scores a 10 except for
Exactly.
me. The wobbling.
But I can't score 10.
No way.
Yeah, I haven't tried your technique though. Your technique is very good.
Delivered on the spot.
Yeah, I can sit with no help, but then coming up, and so
I'm the complete opposite. Yeah, I can't sit with. There's a leverage situation for me where there's like a lot of stuff in the way.
Yeah.
You know, like when your quads get big enough and your torso's big enough,
Yeah.
sitting vertically straight down to your butt is kind of like how.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I need to actually. I only tried it once. I need to actually work on it. Maybe if I found some greater flexibility or something. But
Rig the scale.
one more result: one legged stand. 13 seconds was 9th percentile.
That's low, huh?
It's low. So the
Damn.
range here is, so the 99th percentile for men would be 35 seconds.
Oh, okay.
On one leg.
Is there a way we can go through all of these where I caveat everything to make it look like I was barely trying so that I can?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
What a fun use of
from your
time.
first attempt, your first attempt was what, 4 seconds, 5 seconds?
seconds, yeah.
And then you tried and got to 13.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I think you're definitely on the trajectory. But I mean, overall, these are like markers.
What's the balance thing indicating? You think? What does it say about? So clearly, direct balance doesn't help you not age. What are the underlying inferential things we can pull out as far as what is balance? Is neural health? Is it
Exactly.
something like
Yeah.
okay.
As you age, your balance deteriorates.
No way.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a
I
very
never.
predictable curve.
I've done tests like this throughout my life, and
Yeah.
as soon as my eyes close, I get wobbly enough to just not give a shit anymore about trying any harder. So I'm like, fuck that.
Yeah.
It's a curious test. I wonder about my neural health.
Yeah.
Because anabolics are no good for that. Though I do take a few supplements and I do get lots of sleep and all this other stuff. I do wonder about how much my burning at the stake work-wise. Because like I got an interesting machine up there. It likes to think. And like, do I not recess back away from intense thinking often enough to get the repair processes going? I do wonder about that occasionally. Self-investigated estimates of cognitive capacity are always an everywhere dog shit.
Yeah.
But I don't feel substantially stupider than when I was younger. I also feel like my ability to have deep revelations about complex concepts has increased substantially since then. So I can't say I'm like duller in some capacity. I do have a thing where I think that if we make it another 5 to 10 years, the neural regenerative therapies are going to be so absurdly powerful that like I can lose a few IQ points and afford it, though you want to be as smart as possible. What is your thinking about optimizing
Yeah.
for intellect? And it's a bit
Okay, I'm good. Don't care. What's going on with these guys? The implosion at the Daily Wire is accelerating. What started with Jeremy Boring stepping down has now spiraled into mass layoffs and another firing of a senior executive, Alyssa Cordova. the vice president of public relations. Here's all the juicy details. And the girl left too, right? Or got forced resigned or whatever. Brett Cooper? That's the name. God, I'm so smart. One second. Are you worried about stimulants messing with your health in the long run? Not really. The only negative impact I saw was your average heart rate can go up. I think like 4 to 7 BPM over a lifetime. So I run now to counteract that. Here's a Brett clip from the Sean Ryan interview. Daily Wire just fired Alyssa Cordova, their VP Public Relations, and according to sources, she was Jeremy's minion. One was responsible for crafting the company's aggressive and paranoid media strategy. She allegedly stalked former employees online, kept folders of clipped videos of their enemies, helped wage internal vendettas under the guise of PR. One source, the disaster of the PR strategy over the last year was cooked up between Jeremy and Alyssa. What even has been happening? Have they been like losing viewership or? The Daily Wire is also shuttering its kids division entirely, roughly a quarter of the company. And internally, people are furious. One source put it bluntly. If they let Jeremy go a long time ago, many people would still have jobs today. Everyone knows it. Wait, were they the ones in charge of making that super ultra fucking cringe cartoon that they had me on? Or that they had an impersonation of me on? Or was that something different? The one that Dave Rubin was involved in? Check Ben's YouTube channel. He fell off hard. Ben Shapiro.
What if...
Jesus. I don't know what the viewership his channel used to get was. Oh, geez. Huh. Maybe he hasn't been making as many videos? I have no idea. With a quarter of the company gone and its core leadership in flames, the big question now is, what happens to people still there? Can Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, and the rest stay insulated from the chaos? I feel like it's hard because as much as Ben Shapiro tries to go like full MAGA right wing, I don't know if Ben Shapiro would traditionally appeal to those crazy MAGA people. Like, he'll carry water for Trump, but I don't know if he pushes the insane level of conspiracy that Trump does necessarily. Or at least not with the same excitement or vigor that some of the new, like, official state media, OAN and all that bullshit does. I have no idea. This one is better. The last one was a clip.
In light of the Black Lives Matter movement.
You're telling me this is a 6-minute clip from a...
How long was
10-minute video? Okay.
it after you left the Daily Wire that...
Adult friendships are really hard.
When you left,
your maid of honor.
What does this next chapter look like?
Do you want to say anything to her?
Just anecdotal, but a cousin of mine that was and still is a big Ben Shapiro fan goes for all the mega stuff. Yeah, but I wonder, is he still watching Ben Shapiro as much as he was before? There's so much more, basically, state-run propaganda media to consume, especially on social media.
What was the final straw? I mean,
There wasn't
almost
a-
nobody would give that up
Yeah.
and start from scratch. And that's...
Start from scratch? What, hello? What, she was a super popular person compared to starting from scratch. What do you mean? That's a really weird way to phrase that, but okay.
why I respect you so much.
Mm-hmm. No, it was terrifying. I had to, Alex and I had a conversation. This was not this is a lot of thinking and praying and analyzing, and we looked at each other and we're just kind of like, are we basically willing to lose everything and start from scratch?
So brave.
Because again, we had, Alex had just started his own business. We had bought this farm that was like...
Is that her boyfriend? Isn't she like 23 or 24? Is she making huge... Ooh. I mean, she's young, so other people will figure it out. Is she making like huge career decisions off of like a relationship that she's been in? She's married. Oh, Jesus. Wait, when she says bought the farm or whatever, usually that's a analogy for, or a metaphor for dying. Does she mean they actually literally bought a farm? Was that like a literal thing?
It was a stretch. But we really wanted it.
Okay.
And I was like, I could leave, and it could backfire on me immediately. Nobody could care. Maybe I wouldn't make any money. Maybe I would have no anything. And I basically just had to decide, like...
Damn, 23. To be fair for her, I guess, at this age, it probably is a lot of uncertainty because she's been doing it for so little, or not very long, right? So, yeah.
Does that matter to me? And it didn't.
And it worked.
Yeah. But it wasn't because I was like, yeah.
1 million subs in 1 month when you launched your new show.
Yeah. It was very humbling and gratifying. I was like, okay. But it's terrifying. And I literally, like, our conversation was like, are we willing? My mom had just decided to move to Nashville. I was like, are we willing to, like, go move back in with her? And, like, literally start over. If, like, you're funding our life now, Alex, and I can't help it all, and I'm making no money. Like, if all of it went away, and at the end of the day, like, I don't really care about being famous. Like, it comes with what I do, but I would be just as happy if I was telling stories in a different capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's finding the root of what you love to do and then applying it. I don't need this to survive. I don't crave it. I do it because I love sharing stories with people. I love hopefully making them think differently about the world. I love making people feel like they're not alone in whatever they're going through, whether that's like on my subscription platform where we do our Dear Brett series and I'm able to talk to people. Like I had a girl last week, talk to me about, she has a grandfather with dementia who is, forgetting who she is and has gotten violent and is like, how do you go through that? Like, how do you still love somebody and be there, but protect yourself and know that, that isn't the person that you know anymore? I got to talk about my brother, which I don't often get to do. And it's like, I've had so much crap happen in 23 years. It's like, I hope that I can make somebody's life a little better if they haven't experienced this and they're now going through it for the first time. I hope I can make you feel less crazy about the world and feel less alone. But I don't have to have 4 million or 1 million subs to do that. Like that isn't why I do this. I could go back to Trader Joe's and I'd be happy.
Well, you just described the why.
Yeah.
And you hit it. And you seem
This guy looks like Tim Pool's dad, right? We can agree with that, right?
very fulfilled.
Yeah.
That's good to see. Not a lot of people have that, man.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people feel fulfilled in what they're doing.
Yeah. And that was the first step to freedom.
Connect the red. Wait, if you connect these sequentially, does it work? Like if I connect it like this and I pump red stuff into this, will it go into there? Oh, okay, that's helpful. Okay.
But being like, I'm okay if this doesn't work, and I'm willing to fight to make that happen.
When you left, your maid of honor, best friend, was it Reagan? Is that her name? Took over the comments section. How did that feel?
Friendships are hard.
Are you guys still friends?
Nope.
I don't say so.
Damn. Rough.
Would you like to still be friends?
Of course. I talked about that actually in another Dear Brett thing. Adult friendships are really hard. You always think it's going to get easier. Kind of just gets harder.
Why is it so dramatic? She's literally 23. What are you talking? Everything in your life is dramatic when you're 23. What do you mean? It's a pretty big change up. Jesus. You motherfuckers all act like this when you're like leaving home to go to college for the first time. Of course. These are like the biggest things in your life. Everything is the biggest thing in your life when you're this age. And then for her, it's the biggest thing in a lot of people's lives. Yeah, so.
And with more people knowing who you are and having influence and having eyes on you, then you kind of question people's motives in being...
Most 23-year-olds don't act like this. Okay. True. You're 23. I can tell by that statement.
friends with you, and it's kind of like a hard knowing how to meet people, and so I'm like loyal to maybe a fault. But I like...
Do you feel that she was disloyal in taking the role?
No, she can do... She's an adult. She, and this is what I will always stand by, you have to make the decision that is good for you and your family. I did that, and she did that.
Why do you think the friendship fell apart?
Jesus.
If you wish her the best of success.
Friendships are hard.
Do you want to say anything to her?
Why is it... This guy's being kind of... Well, never mind. He's not weird, but it's just... Jesus.
That's a difficult question. But at the end of the day, I wish you success, and I wish you well. And I hope that she chases the things that she wants, and I never wish that, to not work for anybody. But I mean that genuinely. There have been so many people that have come in and out of my life.
I shouldn't store
over the
anything
years.
here, right? I should just have chem plants. I need to get over myself.
And I think that it's important to let go. Can't control everything, even though you might like to. People make their own decisions. Sometimes it hurts. But at the end of the day...
What's wrong with her friend taking over her old show? I don't get it. Is that like a taboo in media? Well, what do you mean? The show is literally called The Comment Section with Brett Cooper. Now it's probably The Comment Section with a different person. Yeah, I imagine that feels probably pretty shitty.
Everybody's figuring it out. And we make choices, we live with choices, we do what we believe is best for us and our goals and our dreams. So yeah.
Good for you.
That's a healthier way to handle it.
Good for you.
Good for you. Wow. Did Daily Wire do it wrong? I don't know. I don't know if this is part of a larger podcast. I still don't technically know what happened or why she got asked to leave or what happened.
How long was it after you left the Daily Wire that you started it?
My last day was December 10th. And I think we started the show at the end of January.
Oh, Jesus. It's fucking 4 hours long? What the fuck?
Brett Cooper.
Therapy and mental health.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Oh, let's hit that section real quick. I need to hear the therapy's not real and mental health can be cured by just walking through a forest. Give me my conservative take, please.
So, I want to do a life story on you.
Okay.
I know there's a lot there, especially for a 23-year-old man. You've been through it, and there's a lot of depth that I don't think you've really gone in depth on a lot of this stuff on other podcasts. So
Very rare. Yeah.
I want to be the one. I want to be the
Sounds
one
good.
that gets it.
That's what my husband said last night as we were leaving dinner with you guys. He was like, "This is the podcast to talk about that stuff," and I was like, "I know. That'd
Cool.
be good." Yeah.
Are you nervous?
No, not at all. I love talking about.
You
this
think you're
stuff.
gonna get emotional?
Probably.
Right on, man. Good. That's what
I
we do
cry
here.
easily.
It's like a therapy session.
I know, and I loved therapy. People rag on therapy
Oh,
a lot,
shit.
especially on the right, and I sort of do, and I think people like overuse it.
Mm-hmm.
It was incredible for me.
There we
And
go.
I, like,
When did you
Never
start
mind.
therapy?
I was like 14.
14 years
A
old?
lot of shit going on.
Yeah, I know, man.
I had to work through it. But no, I think that's the thing that, not to go completely off topic, but there was a time in my life when I needed it, when there was so much going on that I couldn't comprehend, and I didn't have the tools to navigate through. And so that's why I sought out help, and I went through a few.
Oh, it's even like a good take on they're not just there to fix your problems or whatever, but a good therapist is somebody that can help you figure yourself out and give you the tools that you need to deal with things in life. Nice.
Different therapists trying to find somebody, and I found somebody who was, yes, very empathetic and would listen, but was solutions focused. Of like, this is how you navigate this. This is what you need to say to this person. How do we better your communication so you can get what you need in this very, very chaotic family structure that you're living in? Like, it was giving me the tools I needed, so I didn't need to go forever. Like, I got through that period, and I got to a point where I was like, I don't need to go.
How do I get water
trauma
in
dump
space?
every Thursday afternoon. So I haven't been back, and I've wondered if there's like
You don't go today?
Mm-mm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can you
Last year I
barrel
thought I
stuff?
might need to.
Oh, fuck.
I think I need to. I've been kicking around the idea of going back. I haven't been in probably 7 years, I think.
Yeah. If you find a good person, again, somebody that's not an enabler, which I think is hard to find. You look up like therapists in Nashville, and the first person that pops up is like the person who was in Matt Walsh's What Is a Woman? And you're like, oh, fuck. Like, you're not who I want to talk to. But if you find, again, a good person that is focused on providing you tools so that you can make your life better, because they can't change your life for you.
Yeah.
But if they help you break down the things that are in your way, the things that are out of your control, that give you a set of tools so you can move forward, that's an incredible, whether that's a therapist or a life coach or just a mentor in your personal life in your church, everybody should have something like that.
Her brother died and she was forced to homeschool.
Yeah, a lot of times I think people just break it down themselves.
Yeah.
Just hearing yourself talk, you realize
Journaling,
how insane you are, and and work through a lot of those issues yourself. But yeah, I think about going back. I mean, with the rise of the show and just a lot of people coming at you, it can be enraging.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm kind of working through. But you dealt with that at a young age, and I want to talk about that later
Yeah,
too.
sounds good.
So, but we have a couple things to knock out here. So I have a Patreon account. You know
Yes,
that.
I do.
Where's your subscription network?
We have our own.
BrettCooper.com?
No, it's called Cooper Confidential.
Cooper Confidential.
Confidential.
Nice. What do you do on there?
I do a weekly advice video. Do you remember like Dear Abby in the newspaper?
Yes.
I was obsessed with Dear Abby. And so I have people send in questions because a lot of the times when I get emails from people, it's like, I'm having trouble figuring out something in a relationship or with college, or I know that you've dealt with this with your brother or your parents. Could you help me through this? So it's like these long, long questions that I've never really had the avenue to answer before. So I can't just email people back all day long, even though I would love to. So we open up the question portal every week and people send in,
So your brother dies
at 5.
at age 5.
I'm age 5, he's 17. He dies on they went to a school in Chattanooga. They were on the rowing team. They were both super athletic, very artistic. I mean, they were like the most well-rounded guys. They're both brilliant, incredibly artistically talented. Like, I have my own creative talents. Like, I can't draw for crap. And they were both, brilliant, but also brilliant at math. Like, my brother Reed had a perfect SAT score. Just so well-rounded, incredibly athletic. They were on the rowing team. Just good guys. And out of nowhere, David had cardiac arrest and fell off the rowing machine right in front of Reed.
Jesus.
They were 17 years old, identical twins. They never had that like separation that like psychologically twins have to go through. And if you're not a twin, like I don't even think I can understand what that feels like. But I've talked to enough twins now, and I've talked to Reed, 17. I think this is we're going into the 18th year since David has died. So he's now been gone longer than he was here. And I've spent enough time talking with Reed throughout that period of like they were still one person. They had done everything together. And he watched his brother die in front of him. There were no defibrillators in the gym. There was nothing anybody could do. He was basically dead on sight. And it was Valentine's Day in 2007. And yeah, it was, that changes the family forever. And there were so many different, it's like grief is such a patchwork, like a quilt, in my opinion, because everybody's perspective and journey is different. My mom's journey was completely different than my dad's. This is not my dad's biological son. He never adopted my brothers. They had it was very tense. Like the week before David died, my dad and David had a huge blowout. David even went to my mom that week and was like, why are you still in this marriage? Like, this doesn't work. I think she had a ton of regret over that. And so my dad's journey was completely different. And I think just because he wasn't their biological father, he had spent 14 years with him. It was very different than my mother's. Reed's journey as an identical twin was completely different, something that none of us could ever understand. My older brother, Chase, had a completely different journey that I don't even think I really know much about. He's military. He's like, closed case, done. And he was far away at the time he was in college. Then mine was completely different than anybody else's because I didn't know him. I have these memories of things we would do together, and we would wake up on Saturdays and he would eat me waffles and we'd go like ride in the car together and that kind of thing. But my grief was like growing up and everybody has all of these memories with this person and you don't.
There's a I like everything she said here a lot. This is a very mature person given the age and everything. I don't know if I've just been black pilled on. I have been black. No, I'm not black pilled. I'm honest pilled. White pilled? No, is that hope? Bro, when people die, it is... No, fuck. It feels shitty saying it. Every single time, like, a person's aunt dies or, like, an uncle dies, this person, like, you hear people like, oh, this person's like a second father to me. This is a second mom to me. I spent more time with this for the name of it. Like, really? Did you really? I've, like, never heard you bring up this person ever, literally, in our entire lives. I've known you for years. You've never brought this person up. And now that this person died, you were their closest person ever. So props to her for not only not leaning into that, which is fucking cringe, but it is true that there is probably like a different type of experience there to where members of your family have memories of this person that you've never even met before, or you have, but you were younger. And she's even going up to like 7. By 7, 99% of people online would say, oh yeah, I knew this person so well. They were my hero, my idol. I knew so much about them, but yeah, but interesting. She was 5? Oh wait, did she say 5? I thought she said 7. But even at 5, people would make it up. But...
Do you remember how you found out?
Yeah, so it was Valentine's Day. I got a phone call from the school. And again, that's like my mom is I truly think it's one of the best things she's ever done in terms of raising us. She was so honest. There was no hiding anything, which I think in the world of helicopter parenting and trying to protect your kids and kind of putting them in this glass box, like that's become very abnormal, and people would look at our life and be like, why would you not shield them from this? But I'm very glad that she didn't.
Wait, real quick. If it's of this width, should I just make the whole thing this width? Is there any advantage to not having this?
But it was just like, looked at me and went, David's collapsed. We need to go to put down your Valentine's. We were like having a Valentine's Day party. And we have to go. And I remember getting in the car and I had like the Valentine that I'd made David. And I was just like 5 years old and holding it. Oh God, I haven't talked about this in so long.
Doesn't matter, okay.
So I watched all of it. We got to the school as he was being put in the ambulance. We went to the hospital, and I had like a nurse take me out as they were, talking about what was going on, and they had no idea what happened. I was wearing lime green clogs, and I remember because we were there until very late. I was walking through the halls of the hospital. I could hear my like Hannah Anderson clogs like clomp through the hospital hallways. It's like funny the things you remember. And they were in like a very dark, purpley room. And I had no idea what happened. And I think it's some kind of like epigenetics of something, environmental happened. We have genuinely no idea at the time. Nothing came of the autopsy. We all immediately, especially Reed, we came to Nashville and went to Vanderbilt. They have one of the best pediatric cardiology programs in the country, probably the best. Did, hundreds of tests to figure out, was there any risk for Reed? And there was nothing. Nothing. And David always drank Red Bulls in the morning. He would drink like 2 Red Bulls a day. He would drink one on the way to school. My mom would always kind of like, David, you probably shouldn't drink that. And he'd be like, Mom, everybody's drinking them. But she just said there was like a gut feeling of, I don't think this is good for you. And she asked the doctor at the time, like, do you think this like is caffeine intake? Like what? Like we have no answers. What could have happened for a completely fit, no chronic illness?
There's young people dying is always a very weird thing, but especially for stuff related to heart stuff or whatever, unless this guy was drinking like fucking 20 Red Bulls every single day and like shorting his sleep and taking meth, like there's somebody that young shouldn't, like, that's just insane.
There's no history of anything, collapse and die within 15 minutes. When you have an identical twin brother standing here with no problems, who still to this day doesn't have any problems, never had any scares or anything. And she was like, could it have been, let's talk about what my mom was very matter of fact of like, let's figure it out. Like what happened? We need to, obviously like prevent this from happening to any of the other kids. She brought up the Red Bull and we like laughed at her. And last year's study came out over like from the last 10 years about the cardiac effects of drinks like Red Bull.
Shit.
And so that's just like one thing. But again, they threw around something called long QT, which is a rhythmic condition, which I go in for like EKGs and testing. We all do. I don't know if Chase still does, but every 5 years or so, we'd go in and I'd get routine testing, and they noticed something a few years ago, so I came back up to Vanderbilt. We did all that, but it was nothing worth really addressing. But I monitor my caffeine intake for that reason. I look for like defibrillators in rooms at gyms and that kind of stuff, but nothing serious. But that long PT, that was just kind of a shot in the dark of like, maybe it was that, and that can be just spurred by environmental things. So yeah, that's completely out of the blue.
What did the Valentine say?
I think it was just Happy Valentine's Day, like, love Brett, do David with a little heart. There's a lollipop.
He had a weak heart, and Red Bull was the difference. I was fine until Red Bull put me into AFib one day and never been the same since. If a Red Bull is putting you into AFib, or if a Red Bull is destroying your heart that much, then something would have done it eventually. I doubt he had a weak heart if he was a star athlete. If he was a really powerful, really good athlete, there's no way a bit of caffeine would cause your heart to explode. I don't believe that. There's something else is probably going on there. Well, obviously it wasn't. This kid died when he was 17 or whatever.
It was one of those ones you get at the store where you have the little note that like sticks up on it. I still have it.
You still have it?
Oh yeah. That little book that I made him after the fact. My mom was, again, she's so intentional about everything, and she faces it head on, which I think when you were in the fog of grief, I look back and I'm like, wow, you did this. But if she knew, even at that time, that like my experience was going to be so different than everybody else's, and so she, you know, put all these little papers together and made a booklet, and she was like, I want you to draw out your favorite memories with David. She knew I would forget them. So I have this whole little book of like my terrible stick figure drawings of, you know, going skiing and, you know, making waffles in the morning. And I would love when, you know, David would be like in the car with me and he would like play Flow Rider or whatever. It's like, so I have all those written down.
I'm saying he likely did have a heart condition and wasn't aware of it. Oh, that may be, sure.
And she has those in her house that I can go back and look at. But I'm very like, she knew even at that point that it was going to be a very different journey for all of us. And I think that she handled mine very, very well. And she ended up running a grief organization for many years called Compassionate Friends.
Not the same cause of death, but I've heard about weightlifters who die if they super overexert and rupture internal blood vessels and bleed out internally. My understanding is stuff like that should basically be impossible. Like if you're assuming, unless you're on drugs, then maybe if you're roiding up, because as you train, like your whole body trains to deal with the adaptation is more than just growing muscle, right? I think your capillary beds get thicker, the amount of oxygen you can take in is bigger, your body becomes more efficient doing stuff. Like it's not like just your muscles grow and then the rest of your body explodes. So unless they're like at the peak, like the upper echelons of athletic performance, where they're doing drugs or something, you shouldn't just your body shouldn't explode if you're lifting weights.
Which, if anybody out there has experienced the death of a child or sibling, is an incredible organization that is just about the death of a child. There wasn't a chapter in Tennessee region, and so she created one and ran it. And through that, I met kids that have been in a very similar situation as me. She
says at one point in this video that she thinks he was on meth. Even if he was a meth abuser, he shouldn't be dying at 17 from a heart condition. That my guess is it has to be some congenital thing. It's just so young.
Somebody that was older than them. And again, it's so weird because you grow up and you watch your family struggle, and you hit every Christmas and every anniversary, and no, Christmas was never the same in our house. Like holidays after losing somebody so close to you will always feel just empty. Mm-hmm. This goes this is a deep cut. I was like an English major, but Alfred Lord Tennyson is a very famous English poet, and he has a very, very long poem. It's basically a book called In Memoriam that tracks his experience through grief after losing his best friend. And I remember I read it in college, and I was just like, hit, because I'd never heard anybody show the waves of grief over the course of 10 years of and there was these moments each year that he would cover in the poem about holidays and Christmas specifically. There's something about those.
You're coping because you drink it? No, the people who espouse the harms of Red Bull the most are the fucking people that down 7 cups of coffee a day. And you guys are coping because you think there's some magical thing in Red Bull that's attacking your heart while ignoring the fact that your caffeine intake daily is probably 5x higher. You're popping Zins and going to Starbucks 3 times a day. At least I don't drink Red Bull.
Those days that are so, they're about family and about community and about coming together in love. And how can you do that when you've lost somebody that's so important? And I'm just seeing that was okay, it's not abnormal what my family is feeling. And having that community through that organization was really helpful. And through that, I met other kids, like I said, who had lost siblings that were older than them, because you grew up in the shadow of grief, which changes your childhood forever. You grow up desperately wanting to have the memories that everybody else does. Of you got 17 years, and I got 5. 3 of which I have no concept of any memory. One of which was at a boarding school. So it's maybe I got 1 year. And then you feel kind of stupid because it's should this even impact me? I was 5 years old. But it completely changes the trajectory of your family and your life. And then I was literally, I almost said subconsciously, but it was much more tangible than that. I didn't think I was going to live beyond 17 years and 1 week, because that was when he died.
Wow.
His birthday was February 7th. He died February 14th. Because you idolize this person, and I've talked to people who have lost parents at a young age and who have lost older siblings. And I had, 12 years of still looking up to him. He was still my older brother.
I mean, it's not just 1 year, though. You know what I mean? I mean, even though you don't have a memory of the first 3 years, I mean, it's there.
Yeah.
I see it with my kids.
Yeah.
1 and 3, and I see my youngest, totally infatuated with my 3-year-old. And, I mean, so there's that bond, that's
it's real.
Forming every minute of every day.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to do anything that her brother's not doing. And so, well, you don't have a memory of it. It's the psyche's in there.
Yeah.
It's ingrained.
And it's hard to rationalize that when you feel ridiculous. But it's like that bond, that idolization that you see with your daughter and your son of, like, you just keep having that. And I was like, I want to go do the things that he did, and I want to be as smart as he was, and I want to be as good of a person as he was. And then you get to that point, and I didn't see a life beyond 17 a week. And I remember my birthday's October 12th. I had midterms. It was a week after that. And I had an English midterm, and then it was my second year of community college. And I had a Spanish midterm later in the afternoon, so I was sitting in the parking garage in my car, sobbing. Because I had made it.
Someone explain the bands. We banned, well, actually, here, some retard in chat types. You can faint during intensive lifting if you have consumed high caffeine pre-workout, 500 grams, and people have died doing squats, bench press, etc. Yes, if you take an inordinate amount of fucking caffeine right before you do a lift and you induce yourself to fucking pass out like a fucking retard, yes, I'm sure there are ways you can die. Yes, congratulations, you found it, yes. It's like me saying, no, if you're a healthy athlete, generally, you shouldn't die while you're lifting. Well, actually, Destiny, there was a guy who was lifting in, where the fuck was the place that just had the earthquake? And he was a perfectly healthy man. And when the earthquake happened, it caused the squat rack to fall over, and he got crushed by a plate. So even young and healthy people go, yes, thank you, fucker, thank you, yes.
I felt so guilty.
Man. What age did you start thinking that? What age did you start thinking you wouldn't make it past 17?
Probably tween. Here's when I really started to be able to think critically about the entire experience. And as it got closer, then it was it genuinely felt like such a betrayal.
A betrayal?
Yeah, of him, of how did I get here? How do I get to live longer than you? Especially when you idolize somebody for so many years. I feel like you were a much better person than I was. It's you deserve so much more, and why am I here? But that's also, on the flip side, it's such a fire under your ass. Of I always say, I feel like I'm living for two people. Because he had such big dreams. He was so smart, he was so creative. It's I never want to waste an opportunity. So my mom gave so much to me and pushed so hard for me to pursue the things that I loved that would, make me better, happier, more fulfilled.
Does that turn you into an overachiever?
Sure. Yeah.
We're doing pretty damn good.
I know, yeah. I don't even think about it as overachieving. It's just just don't stop.
Push it to the limit?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we have this is a huge veteran audience, and a lot of kids, that have lost parents, lost siblings.
Yeah.
I mean, what advice do you have for them? Especially the young kids. I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen my friends die, and I've seen their 5-year-olds show up to the casket with an American flag over it. They don't know what's going on.
No. I think.
Or maybe they do.
I don't think you understand the magnitude of it until later. You understand the magnitude because they're gone. But as you get older, you realize the magnitude of what that means for the rest of your life and what you'll carry. So I think that would kind of be the advice, is just know it will never go away. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's just I think people think of oh, you're grieving. You're in mourning, and we would have, family friends and even people in our family who would say literally somebody in our family told my mom, it's been 10 years, why aren't you over it? But you'll never be over it. And you can choose to let that cripple you, or you can choose to let it fuel you. You can choose to let
Jesus.
it. Myself, another big part was my brother's psychosis was really hard. He was, he got pretty violent. And my mom was kind of torn in a million different directions of the divorce was happening in Tennessee. I was in LA. My brother was in LA. Because he had been bounced around and struggled and went to India for 3 years to find himself, and I think I did every drug in the book and came back just completely different. And really did not get along with my dad. They had a huge falling out. He came out to LA and just continued to struggle. So he was homeless at the time. And I had some concerns with that sounds bad saying it out loud, but CPS. Oh, I didn't want, it was not a good environment. And I was in therapy at the time, and they were just this isn't normal. The person that lives in the bedroom next to you having, hearing voices and having a psychotic break and knives pulled and chasing through streets. And, when somebody is going through psychosis, they are not the person that you know. And they don't see you as your sister, or as their sister or their mother. They treat you differently. And they would think of you as a girlfriend, an enemy, or whatever was happening. Can't control it. And I just felt like I had all of this autonomy. I had so much control in one part of my life. I was I have a career, I guess, because I've been acting and I make money, but I'm about to go to college. I was about to turn, it was the summer before I turned 16. I graduated high school. I had this like, worked the, 6 a.m. shift at Trader Joe's every day, worked 6 to 2. And I'm basically like this adult, and yet, I couldn't go work on set without my mom. When you're under 18, for good reason, your parents have to be within eyesight and earshot. And at the time, I was working on that TV show Heathers, and they had planned a second season that was going to be shooting internationally. And that was in the middle of all of this. And I was like, how am I going to be able to work and do this when there's a war happening in Tennessee that my mom has to handle, when there is a different kind of battle here with her other child that she has to manage, and I was just bounced in between it. And I think that there's part of me that hears me saying that and is like, that's so selfish to be like, I'm just going to remove myself from it, but I had the means to do that. And I think it made it easier on everyone too, if like there was a weight lifted off of my mom, because there was just so much legality of, again, if anything ever happened with my brother and I.
Wow.
And if I got wrapped into this custody thing when I was like on the cusp of adulthood and was making strides, when I was about to start college. And so it was not contested. I didn't go to court and bring my family in and be like, I hate all of you, I'm leaving. It was just like, I even had a conversation with my dad. It was a hard conversation. But I had a conversation with both of them, and they were both very supportive. And I was like, I can't be in the middle of this battle. I've done it for too long. And I'm not leaving you. I'm not saying I don't want to be around you. I'm not saying I don't want to be in this family. But clearly you have crap that you need to work through. I don't even say it's crap. It was heavy, heavy things in their lives. And I just need to be let go. And it was a very, it's not something I suggest. I wouldn't go around and say, if you're having a hard time, just go emancipate yourself. It was a very unique situation. It's a very heavy thing.
She got emancipate? Jesus.
My oldest brother, that's when we got really close, had to be brought into it as like an advocate. And, if everything failed and fell apart and I couldn't make money anymore, I was going to go, live with him. He was like, I'll come out to California and I'll take care of you. But I just was literally like two coasts, these like battles. And both of my parents, I think, acknowledged when they were confronted with it, that it was like, we are putting you in the center of things that your future at this age when so much is about to open up for you shouldn't be dictated by what's going on here. And it really, in a lot of ways, it didn't change how we navigated our family. Like, I was still super close to my mom when their divorce was finalized. She moved back to California. She bought a home, moved back in. My brother would, come in and out, when he was in the hospital, when he was homeless. I saw my brother constantly. He's homeless in Pasadena for years, and I would go out and find him. I was telling you last night, he loves fine cheeses, and so I would go and take him to Whole Foods, and with his like shopping cart of things, and would buy him the things that he wanted. I would go like literally like find him in the park wherever he was. So it's a very like, it was a nuanced thing. I didn't say, screw you, I don't want to be in this family anymore, I'm never going to speak to you. It was, I need to be legally released from the liabilities of being in this mess. Of being taken from you and put into a system at 15 years old because of things that are going on that, I don't want to say I could have handled, but that, I'd been going through it for a while, and I could have, I was able to remove myself from the situation in many ways. But through CPS and stuff with my brother, and, I don't want the liability of your divorce and this being messy and a judge dictating where I go and what I do when this is your war. And I'm paying for my own life.
Man.
And I'm graduating high school at 15 years old, and you're about to tell me that everything that now, my life could be because of my brother or because of a divorce. So it protected, it removed the protections of being a minor that for me ended up, I think, were more of a danger in that. Not a danger, but that it was going to make things very difficult. So it was I think it was a very important thing. But again, I don't recommend it. It's very severe.
Do you hear yourself right now?
Yes.
At 15.
It's crazy.
With everything you've been through, you graduate high school, you emancipate yourself, you have a full-time job at Trader Joe's and a full-time acting career, and you're caring for your schizophrenic brother.
Yeah. For that summer when I emancipated myself, he was homeless. He was refusing to take meds. My mom kicked him out, before that. And I emancipated myself, and she went home to deal with the divorce and to divide their assets and help my dad sell the house because he had to move out. And her going back there, I think, helped make it less contentious. It was really hard when they were apart. So she had to go handle that and kind of close that chapter. And so it was just me and Reed. And some days it was funny and go sit with him and his dudes in their shopping cart. There's the main street in Pasadena, California. There's a place called Earth Cafe for anybody who lives in LA. And then across the street there's a church. And then there's like a shopping strip mall. There's an alley. And that's where he slept. With a couple of other guys, all with their shopping carts. And so yeah, I would go. Bring like a little gift bag. Like, here's some water. Like, I haven't given up on you. And sometimes it was funny, and just like I was with him, and some days he would be, passed out in front of Target. Me not knowing whether it was an overdose or whether it was heat stroke, because it was, August in Southern California. Getting calls from people in his homeless community that had little flip phones saying, and one of my community college was in Pasadena. So I just so happened to, that was not really intentional, but I went to Pasadena City College for a lot of my community college classes, that in Santa Monica College, but I would get calls when I was leaving school from his best homeless friend, Jason, being like, Reed really needs you. And I would have to go find him. And there was one time when he was high on something. I'm pretty sure it was meth. And was sitting on top of the rubble of a recently demolished house, saying that he was Jesus, when nobody could get him down. So when you talk about grief, again, in like talking to people and saying, what advice do you have? Grief isn't just about death. I grieved my brother David. I grieved the life that I didn't have with him. I grieved his actual existence. And I grieved my brother Reed because he's nowhere near the person that I grew up with. I don't know if he ever will be. Like, I was sitting with him last week at visitation hours at his psych hospital. And I see it in his eyes. And he has this, he has a twinkle that he's always had. And he's very smirky. He's always been very mischievous. Everybody loves him. Like, even just sitting in the little cafeteria and watching nurses and people walk by and they're all like, oh, you're Reed's sister. Like, I love Reed. But there's a lot of him that's gone. He doesn't speak anymore. Sometime in the last 3 years, he stopped speaking. So when he's out of the hospital and he has his phone, he will communicate through text or he'll write something in his notes app and show me. In the hospital, he doesn't have his phone, especially in an involuntary hold. So he has a little notepad. And so we, sat for an hour talking and writing things back and forth. But I've had to, I think, let go of the hope that he'll be who I knew as a kid. I don't think that's fully gone. There's always part of me that's like, what if? If he did psychedelics, if he woke up one day and said, I'm going to change my diet, I'm going to change my lifestyle. And this is the thing that's so infuriating is our medical system basically sets people like my brother up to fail. And it's this endless cycle where without his meds, he's a danger to society. But with the meds, they're debilitating. And he's so unhappy. And they pump him, through. It's so dehumanizing. Or he's pinned down and injected.
I mean, that's rough. I can understand it probably looks and feels traumatic. But I mean, if somebody is legitimately psychotic, right, who's experiencing schizophrenia, it's always going to be a super shitty, horrible process, I would imagine, right? That sucks, but...
And they caused, paralysis and tremors and, whatever it may be. Some of them are really scary, had cardiac effects. Our history was so scary. And nobody ever talks about diet or lifestyle or other options. He was in an involuntary hold in Idaho for almost 3 years. I didn't see him for 3 years. He stopped speaking somewhere in there, which I don't blame him. These places they're not like pretty rehab places. There aren't places like that. There isn't a place where he can go, live safely in a nice assisted living rehab. If there is, somebody should let me know.
I think your point is that he gets meds only when it's really bad and then they have to force it. Did he have access to them before? Or, because I've heard one of the problems with people with psychotic issues like this is that when they feel good, they don't take their medication because they feel fine. Or I shouldn't say when they feel good, but if they're not having an actual crazy outside, episode, then they're like, oh, I don't need them and they're fine. But then when you start to slip back into psychosis, you don't have the wherewithal to know that you need them. And then you're kind of like, fuck. I think that's something about bad access or healthcare. Oh, okay, maybe.
They're really shitty halfway houses or psych facilities.
Like a manic episode, kind of. Manic episodes might count as psychosis, but people who are just having full-on delusions or hallucinations, you're at that point you're kind of fucked, I think.
Can't leave. We have no right.
She said that her mom kicked him out because he refused to take his meds. Yeah, it's really rough because you when you're dealing with people, you have this fundamental assumption that you have a shared reality between the two of you. We don't talk about this and we don't think about this, but intuitively we have the assumption that we're sharing the same reality and we perceive the same things in reality. And when the other person's not, it's just a very weird, crazy experience, especially when it's somebody who used to. It's very difficult as well, right?
So I don't blame him for shutting down, but you're put on these meds because you can't function without them, and you're given the crappiest food. And I was so angry just last month that I'm his guardian, by the way. That was another thing we dealt with last year of
I'm so curious because I have a few friends like this who are super MAGA, but they also have family that struggles with really big medical related stuff, either bills or receiving the proper care. And I'm so curious how they reconcile this in their heads. Do you perceive this getting better or worse under an ideal conservative administration? I don't know how that works.
Angry just last month that I'm his guardian, by the way. That was another thing we dealt with last year of we had to fight for so many years, my mom did, to get information. about him, and he would be arrested, taken to hospitals. We have no idea where he is. He'd be switched from doctor to doctor to doctor, literally like, trying to chase him down.
There's long-acting forms of the antipsychotics we usually inject in the psychiatric hospital, and one shot usually lasts for 2 to 3 months. I didn't know about that. I don't know anything about antipsychotic medication. I have no clue. They usually show up again in psychosis, but it's the best we can do.
To get information, not in like a we need you back, but of like how could we help you? We don't even know where you are. And so we finally were approved guardianship, and Reed knows, and I think he was happy that it was me. That he trusts me a lot, which I'm really grateful for. But you know, he was released from this involuntary hold. He had a halfway house and seemed to be doing better. But you know, I was talking with my mom, and it was in Idaho, it was in Boise. He only got to Tennessee recently. It was a whole other situation. He kind of accidentally got here. I had to think maybe it was a God thing, because my mom and I had been talking. It's like it'd be really great if he could get close to you. And he just went missing one day and showed up in Tennessee. So worked out. But the point being, he was there for 3 years. He stopped speaking, and there were no changes to his diet. He was fed the worst food. It's hospital food.
Is she really MAGA though? I don't know if I really saw her do much. I feel like most of it was like cultural commentary, but it was like from a conservative perspective for sure.
I was in visiting hours last week, and we were given like crappy cartons of milk and like Teddy Grahams. And all these studies are coming out about, you know, the effects of carbs and sugar on the brain, of the, and this has been happening for years, of, you know, keto diets being instrumental in keeping schizophrenia at bay. And we have people that have literally removed the voices from their brains, have been able to now, they live totally normal lives, are in relationships.
Never heard this before, that there are diets that can cure. Oh my God, that deletes the whole inventory? Whatever. That there are diets that cure like schizophrenia. I've never heard this before. I'm sure there are things that can probably help. Whatever, fuck this. Like alleviate symptoms and stuff maybe, but...
Relationships are getting married by living a very, very strict lifestyle and diet.
I worked in a psych crisis unit. Yeah, schiz patients are so hard because they're often very paranoid as well. So if they miss one dose, the paranoia can creep back and they don't trust the meds. Oh, sure, yeah.
Totally normal lives, are in relationships, are getting married by living a very, very strict lifestyle and diet. And no doctor has encouraged that. And it's such a missed opportunity. It's like he was there for 3 years and he came out worse.
Man.
And now we're back to square one, and it's this awful cycle of, again, of course he's getting worse. Like, you go into these places, I've been visiting him for years at various different hospitals. It's awful. It's prison. It's maximum security. But like, in order to go back and visit him, I go through like mazes of hallways and doors and keys and whatever, and I can't even bring him like socks. Like, you're not allowed to bring anything in because they could harm themselves. Like, it's.
Yeah.
Like, again, I look at him like, no wonder you stopped speaking.
I mean, it sucks, but like, it sucks. It's a really hard, it sucks. It's just having somebody that has like these types of mental afflictions is just very, very, very hard. There's not like an easy way to deal with it. Yeah, it sucks. There's a reason why when Reckful went once, he said he never wanted to go back again. He'd rather kill himself. Or I mean, I guess he did kill himself, but yeah.
But what other option is there? And we've brought him home. He's lived with me. He's lived with my mom. He's lived on the farm. He's tried everything. And it's just a constant cycle of meds, off meds, jail, hospital, out. Meds, off meds. And I don't know if that'll change. But you kind of have to find peace with the fact that maybe that's just, again, going back to like, this is the reality. And it's not what I hope for him, it's not what I hope for our family, but I've, found peace in that. And I want him to know that I'm never not going to be there. It's like, even if it's 3 years.
Thank you.
If you end up in Tennessee in your first week in an involuntary hold, I'll be there. And I think he feels a lot of shame. Because we went through hell together. And I've seen a lot of things that I think he never wanted me to see. He's done things to me that I think he's incredibly embarrassed of. And we don't really talk about it. But I've tried to let him know as many times as possible without getting into it that it's like, I know it's not you. I'm still going to show up. And it's even harder for my mom. But with, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think that it would be very easy for her to let go. Easier. And just to say, you're not trying to make any changes in your life. You are taking advantage of us. You don't want to use the time when you were on meds and you're doing better to try to change something in your lifestyle to do anything. You would refuse therapy. Like, you would only go to therapy if I went with him. So we did that for a while together, but I had to go with him.
One of the arguments for having kind of like mental institutions is that, like, as much as it sucks, these people need... The problem is that it's not even that they need full-time care. They basically need to have, it's like really rough, but they probably just shouldn't have any autonomy anymore. at some point, like there's an argument that like, I'm sorry, but you're going to be basically reclassified as a child, and there's going to be some freedoms that you lose. Maybe you don't have to live in like in an institution or something, but there's going to be a person that comes to your assisted living or house and forces you to take some medication and signs off that you're doing it because you can't. Your mental condition is like divorced you so much from reality that you can't function in the same world that we do without some kind of like compulsory care, you know? What's the argument against this? Why did we get rid of them? I don't know the answer to that, actually. I can guess that maybe they seemed inhumane. Some of the early psychiatric interventions were pretty brutal. But I don't know the answer why we actually just kind of like dumped that type of care. I don't know.
And I think that, my oldest brother has always advocated more of like, let him go. If he wants to do a shit ton of drugs, if he wants to go be crazy and not accept help, let him go be crazy. You can't control that. And I think my mom is like, I'm not a parent yet. I don't know what that feels like, but she already lost one.
My uncle is schizophrenic. He's been medicated consistently for decades now, but still has several episodes of psychosis. There is a high percentage of schizophrenia patients that are treatment intolerant or resistant, especially the longer they are medicated. Sometimes permanent inpatient treatment is the only option for their safety in the state of others. Oh, I haven't heard of that. I didn't know that schizophrenia like built resistance to those medications. I never heard of that before. That might be true though. I don't know much about those that class of like disorders.
So she's tried to let go. She's tried it a ton of times of like, get out of the house. Like, if you're gonna act this way, go be homeless, because you can't do this under my roof, which you should have done. And I give her so much credit for 10 years later. She shows up. He's in a halfway house and he needs a new set of clothes and a new, bedroom, because he has a little room in his halfway house. She goes and gets it.
Damn, Brett. How do you stay so strong?
Do you think the need to blame someone, e.g. the person who is sick, the system that is treating them, is something to be overcome, i.e. they just accept, or they need to accept that it's a shit situation, getting that vibe here? I would argue that's kind of a nihilistic thought. It might be true, but I think that it's a very hard one for most people. Like, if you look at things like, for instance, like the developing of PTSD after trauma, things like having a religious belief are considered a protective factor for that, because even if bad stuff is happening, if you can make sense of it in your head and that like things are happening for a reason or there's some greater purpose for it, it's easier mentally to cope with those things. If you believe bad things happen for no reason, that's just a really, really rough thing to believe, because the world can be unbelievably shitty sometimes.
I don't know. I think there's a not a beauty, but there's kind of an advantage to this going on for my whole life, basically. To where I don't see this as some catastrophe every time something happens. Which seems like a really fucked up thing to say. But it's like, at this point, it's like, okay, that's life. I'll handle it. I don't have to say it's normal. Because it's not. My family's not normal. My relationship with my brother is far from what I would hope or want. But I think I learned really, really early on that life is messy. And I think it's hard learning that as a kid, but I wouldn't be me without it. I think I went through hit after hit after hit, and they were all very different. And I'm just saying, okay, I'm gonna pick up the pieces, I'm gonna keep going. What can I learn from each of these things?
When's the last time you offloaded like this?
Oh my gosh.
There's also secondary effects to strong mental illness meds in general, making them want to stop when they feel fine. Oh, that's true too. Yeah, depending on how medicated you are for some conditions, the side effects are like pretty not fun and not cool. Sure. Why do these bad cases of schizophrenia happen? Is it always drug or alcohol? My understanding is the vast majority of it, I think there's a very high heritability when it comes to things like the psychotic disorders. I don't know if there's a cluster of these, or that might just be personality disorder. I don't know. But I think it's generally like you have like a genetic predisposition towards it. I'm sure there's some set of factors or some combination of things related to like diet and exercise or whatever that probably can make you a little bit more likely for it to come out, or if you do certain drugs over a long period of time, maybe. But I think generally you just kind of get unlucky, I believe. I remember hearing they had trouble finding a gene for schizophrenia. Is that not true anymore? I don't know if they ever found a gene for it. I just know that I'm pretty sure schizophrenia has a very high heritability. I thought it was like 0.7 or something. I thought. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe it's 0.5 or something. I thought it was decently high.
Have you ever?
Yeah.
How'd you guys meet?
Through Daily Wire.
How though?
He walked in for his second interview, and I think his first one was over the phone. I was the first person that he saw at Daily Wire, and apparently I was scowling at him And he walked in, he was like, oof, I don't know who that, I didn't have a show yet, I didn't have anything. And he was like, that girl is like, we're gonna be enemies, in his very Alex voice, which you know of, like very sarcastic and funny. And in my mind, I was like, who is this? It just like something clicked. I was like, that's somebody. And then at the time, I was like in a cubicle, and they put his cubicle directly in the row behind me. And this man has the like most explosive, boisterous laugh. And there's like
If anyone, you include us, ever want to discuss schizophrenia on an experiential basis, if you're grappling with it or just curious about its effects and the effects it manifests, reach out. I'll think about it.
pause when he's like telling a joke, and then I mean, you can hear it. If he was downstairs right now, and all the soundproofing, you could hear echoing through the halls. And it is like the most captivating, endearing thing. And I would just hear him, or he would be right behind me. And I would just find myself turning around like, who is this person? And he kind of reminds me of my brother in a little way. Like he has this like twinkle in his eye, and he's really spunky, and he's really, really smart, and he's interested in a million different things. And again, I could just like, no matter where he was in this huge office, I could hear, I was like, that's Alex, and he's laughing. So then I was trying to look him up because I'm a girl. I was like, I'm stuck. This guy, who is this? And I was told like, don't shit where you eat, don't like whatever. But I was something about it. I was like, who is this? And I could only find him on LinkedIn. And I didn't have like I think I'd like forgot my password. I couldn't I could only see like part of his profile. I like scrolled all the way down, and I saw Chattanooga, Tennessee, and my brother's high school. And he went to high school with him. And it was like, whew. And then I would see him going and getting water. He drinks more water than any person I've ever met in my entire life, which I were very different because I like dehydrate myself on a daily basis. And so I'd go like position myself by the water cooler. And there was one day where he was walking through, and he was getting water. So I don't remember what comment I made, but I sparked up a conversation. I was like, I desperately have to like, how do I Chattanooga? Like, how do I? And somehow it came up, and I was like, oh, you're from Chattanooga? Like I was gonna say I was like stalking you on LinkedIn. And then I think I ended up like talking with him in the break room for like 2 hours that day. I don't even know what I was supposed to be doing. I don't know what he was supposed to be doing. But I was just like, I think that's my person. He felt the same way, and he like
Right off the bat.
it was just like, there's something. And he's always said he felt really similar and wavered back and forth because he was always like, I'm never going to date somebody that I work with. That's crazy. And he had a conversation with his mom, and she was like, don't do it. What if you break up with her? What if it's awful? Like, she started the show. And he was like, if I ask her out and she says, yes, we're not breaking up. Like, that's it. Like, I think she's it. And asked me out in the parking lot. I was like, shitting my pants. And then I went on.
But that hereditary thing, is that genetic or habit-based or both? Heritability generally rates, you're generally talking about genetics. So there's supposed to be a high genetic component to things like schizophrenia, I believe.
One date, and we like shut down the restaurant, we went to Lachlan Table and Eats Nashville. And I mean, it was like, they had been closed for like an hour. I had no idea. He's great. Yeah, it was like instantaneous. And I went home for Christmas that year, and I went into my brother's yearbooks that have been in my mom's desk for 15 years. I mean, his picture was right there. And I would sit in her office because I wanted to see my brothers and all their friends. I would flip through, like while she was working, I'd flip through the yearbooks. They're called the Facebooks. I would see all the pictures of boys. I would find my brothers. I had no idea that he was in there.
Did he know him?
I knew his little sister. We had play dates. And he's a few years older than me. And we always lived like 5 miles away from each other and had no idea. I was really good friends with his younger brother's best friend. And our moms had mutual really good friends and never crossed paths.
Did he know your brothers?
Mm-mm. He knew of David, I think. David has a memorial statue at Macaulay, and I think David died the year he was an incoming freshman, but it rocked the school, obviously, in a big way, and we had that statue put in. It's this big flame. It's like the eternal flame that's still there and at the school. So he knew that, but he didn't know them personally. They were 3 years older than him.
How long did you guys date before you got married?
Year and a half.
How'd he propose?
I was in Budapest filming Pendragon for Daily Wire, and I had been out there. He planned on coming with me, and he was training for a triathlon, and he tore his ACL and his MCL, and had to get surgery like the week that I was leaving. So he couldn't get on a plane. He had all this recovery. He was like locked up and all this
Destiny.
stuff. So in his mind, he had just bought a rig, and he was like, how the hell am I going to propose? I can't even like bend my knee. What am I going to do? I can barely walk. And so, unfortunately, but also fortunately, I was in Budapest alone for like 8 weeks, I think.
How did you, before we get into Independent, how did you guys come up with the concept? How did you come up with the comment section?
So it was a funny story because there were 2 different sides of it, but I had the idea for a very similar show that I pitched to PragerU, actually. And it was like a quippy, funny, I still have the pilot, actually, and it's me in my LA apartment. I've got my leg up on the chair because that was my whole thing at the beginning of comment section. Like, I always had my leg up. And I was going through news stories from a more like right-wing common sense perspective. And I even read some comments, and I had all the funny memes and edits in there. And I edited it myself in iMovie. And my purpose of that was, it was trifold, I think. Because one, I didn't feel like there was enough content on this side of the aisle that was short form that would reach my generation. Because we have the, attention span of the P. And that was why I added in all the edits and the memes and the sound effects, which is a lot of YouTubers doing that at the time. I was a big fan of this girl named Emma Chamberlain who had blown up on YouTube, over the past 10 years or so. And she always had really funny edits and sound effects, and they would keep me just captivated in these videos. And I also felt like there wasn't anybody that was like me speaking to young people. like I said, Will Witt was the only one. I had a lot of people that I would find on YouTube, and I would listen to Dennis sometimes, and he would pop up on my YouTube feed, or Michael and Ben and Kat would watch Candace's. I was like consuming her stuff during BLM, all of her live streams and her rants and all that. But there wasn't anybody who was young or just like an average girl.
Mm-hmm.
Like the young women that I saw were like the Trump admin interns, and they're like pencil skirts, or like the Fox News women, or they were like the the hunters in Montana. I wasn't either of those. I was like, I'm just kind of I don't know, I'm just sort of in the middle. I'm just don't want to really be preached at, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that doesn't make sense, and it's chaotic, and I'm losing friends, and I feel alienated and lonely, and if I feel this way, then I know other people do. So maybe I could do something about it.
Was it all you?
Mm-hmm.
You came up with it all?
Well, so that was my side of it. And so I had this pilot pitched, and so when Daily Wire approached me, I was like, actually, I had this idea for a show, and they have obviously a very strict pitch policy, as anybody does in entertainment. They're like, actually, we can't, if you pitched it somewhere else, like, we can't accept your pitch, not even hired yet. And so we were just sitting in this Zoom meeting. They're like, this is our idea. It'll be a short form show. We want, really funny edits and memes, and you'll read comments. I was like, this is perfect. This is like the meeting of the minds. And it was so cool, and I think people assume, and I've said this before, that it was like the suits there that were going, we need to reach the young people. It was like the entire show was created by people that were around my age. They were all newly graduated. I think the oldest was like 24. So it was created out of necessity for the content that we wanted to consume, made by us for people our age. And so they got the green light to hire me, even though I don't think the suits knew, why I was being hired. But they're like, okay, try it out. And somehow got a green light, even though the execs were like, we don't understand the show, but if you think it's gonna, just try. So we had no money, tiny budget. I was in the back of a studio that was shared by two other people. I had like a little tiny corner. We had no paid ads, nothing, no marketing machine. They were just like, see if anybody watches. And it was just really, really was perfect, because the people that we were working with, we just had like, that's how you kind of know that something's hopefully going to work and that you've created something great, when it's like we've all felt this need for something that's very similar. We all came together and had already been thinking about this. It was like, this has got to be magic. And they brought the comment section, like the name, they had already had the name, and they had tried the concept with another young woman who'd worked there previously. And what they brought to it was having it be driven by comments. Of like, that's a unique, kind of value add of, don't just talk about your values and opinions, but like, what are normal people on the internet saying? I was like, that's a great addition. So they contributed that part, and we developed it for 3 months. And then launched it in, I think, end of February or March in 2022. And in the back corner of that tiny studio, with no money, no paid ads, nobody really paying attention, we hit $1 million in 4 months.
You hit $1 million in 4 months.
Yeah.
You amassed $4.5 million in 3 years.
Yeah. It was a rocket ship. We were the fastest growing show, and on the right, we were one of the top 3 fastest.
Why are we watching this? I don't know. My bad.